But what it's looking like is there is actually a very significant overlap between long COVID and COVID vaccine injury, which makes sense because the spike protein is identical, especially with the alpha variant. But there is a little bit of a variation, and there is a signature to the syndromes, which Yale is working on putting out a paper on that right now. So hopefully we'll have the answer to that very soon.
Do you have just a sense of it yourself, just hearing so many of these stories? Are
Yeah,
there
for
are
sure.
there ways to kind of tease it out if you're confused yourself?
Yeah, like if people have an overlap of both, which there are quite a few people that do, there's a higher likelihood that you end up with a neuropathy after the vaccine, which
Mm,
makes sense because with COVID, it's going through the nose and it's going through, all of these different immune defenses before it gets watered down and then it goes through your system.
okay.
With the vaccine, it's getting shot straight into your arm. So those codes to make the spike protein are going straight into your veins. And then so it's got a straight shot to everywhere where your immune system is going to get targeted. And we've seen those with previous vaccines, with the HPV vaccine,
Yeah.
even the Hep B vaccine, the MMR vaccine. When you actually look at the product inserts, which I didn't do until I was injured, you will see small fiber neuropathy, seizures, MS,
Guillain-Barré.
Guillain-Barré. Yeah. And these are all neurological, conditions that, like you think of MS and you think of, like a middle-aged woman, right?
Right.
Um, it's I couldn't imagine that happening to a kid. So this class of illnesses that are triggered by vaccination in general. I think it'd be really, really, really important for us to research why that's happening, what's actually triggering that in the body, see if we can offset that so we can reduce the risk of these permanent conditions from happening after vaccination.
I mean, there's a lot of research being done on COVID and long COVID. So, what's the problem? Why are we not looking at this more fully?
It's a really good question. And the answer is very simple. It's not convenient for the vaccination gods to be funding the research for that. There is no funding
Mm,
available for COVID vaccine adverse events or other vaccine adverse events. The funding that is going into that, we have to hunt down and we look really, really hard for it. But I really genuinely believe that putting funding into researching this is going to be the key to restoring vaccine confidence in people. People want to know. There's enough people that have met people that have problems with the COVID vaccines. They want to see it on paper, what's going on. They don't want to be gaslit anymore with these, like pharma funded studies that are like, hey, it's fine, everything's fine. Just
yeah,
go get it. COVID's so much worse. COVID
right.
is terrible. Just go get your shot. And that's not the questions people are asking. People are not asking, is the vaccine worse or is COVID worse? That's
That's
not
right.
what's causing vaccine hesitancy. I've long believed that vaccine hesitancy is not caused by misinformation. Vaccine hesitancy is rising because of not enough information.
Not enough information. And then what was put out about these specific vaccines is really, they were just lies. A lot of it was just not true. And, I don't like these terms like pro-vax and anti-vax because I just think those are ridiculous terms made up by the government to sort of put people in these boxes. But I would say that aside, like the most pro-vax doctors that I know, they're disheartened by feeling misled. They feel duped. Their doctors, like they weren't allowed to critically think. They weren't allowed to report what they saw with their own eyes. I know doctors who were literally told in hospitals they cannot report vaccine injuries
Mm-hmm.
through VAERS because they didn't want their institution to be flagged. You
Right.
weren't allowed to talk about it openly. It was literally hushed. I mean, I heard this so consistently.
These are people's firsthand accounts of what is going on the front lines. And it's very different from the watered down narrative that people are
Yes.
allowed to talk about.
That's right. I also was told by multiple researchers who can't be quoted in a national, magazine or newspaper about long COVID or anything resembling something, a question about the vaccine, unless you promote the vaccines.
Right.
So I also asked some producers in news shows, and I also asked some editors at large publications, and they've verified that that is correct. It's just very disturbing because where do you go to find out the truth? I mean, I don't know that there is one source. I try to literally go to sources themselves.
Right.
I learned more today than I have in a long time in terms of the public outreach and the public proselytizing, basically propaganda campaigns that are going on around the vaccines. So specifically, were you in touch with people like Peter Marks, who runs the vaccine? I think he's head of biologics at FDA, or Janet Woodcock, who was the head of the FDA during this time. Did you speak to any of them, and what were they saying to you? Because I think they're
Yeah.
the big bold names need to be, we need to know what they knew and when.
Yeah. So, in addition to what the NIH knew, the FDA also knew, and they were completely aware. We were working with Janet Woodcock as early as February of 2021. She was acknowledging that they're seeing all kinds of reports of neurological reports from the COVID vaccines, and they're looking into it. They keep reassuring us that they're trying to figure out how to communicate this to the public. In March of 2021, the NIH and the FDA are talking together with several drug company officials on these email strings copied. And they're saying there's already 1,000 neurological adverse events being reported in bears. Just give us some more time. Just give us a couple more weeks before you start publicizing this. We're working
So
on putting the data together so we can disclose this.
so they're stringing you along. They're telling
Yeah.
you, don't worry, we got your back. Just let us do this our way, and we'll
Yep.
take care of you.
Yep.
And then did they ever come out?
No.
And okay.
There's one study that came out on a preprint that was really watered down, and they basically stated that the therapies they gave us fixed us, which is not true, and they knew that that wasn't true. So that was the first thing. But yeah, so this battle with the FDA, it continued from basically February 21 through 2023. And we kept going back and forth with Peter Marks, who's the head of biologics. He's the guy that puts the rubber stamp of approval on the licenses for the
Mhm.
vaccine. So he's
Mhm.
the guy tasked with evaluating the safety and the efficacy of the vaccines. And he was very vague, but also very validating. He said over and over and over, there's no question that there's adverse events to the COVID vaccines. There's no question that this has happened to you and the people that you know. We just don't know what to do about it. So we pushed him on dysautonomia. We pushed him on POTS. We pushed him on autoimmunity. We pushed him on tinnitus. And we were pushing as hard as we could to get them to add issues to the product label. So the package insert, right? Like tinnitus and paresthesias, which is a side effect in Europe, but for coincidentally is not a side effect in the US.